This is CJR News at 6 o'clock. Here are the week's top stories. Canadian troops in Afghanistan killed an unarmed Afghani man who drove too close to one of their vehicles.
The Premier of Quebec announces his plans for the last quarter of his mandate.
And Montreal is gearing up for St. Paddy's weekend. Good evening, I'm Trevor Rouse.
And I'm Martha Warboy.
Good evening, I'm Trevor Rouse.
And I'm Martha Warboy. Thanks for joining us. As troops attempt to stabilize increased tension in Afghanistan, Canadian reserves are studying how to prepare for today's urban war. Irene Caselli visited the Laval Armory to discuss training and combat.
We're going to only imagine that there's several rooms, several kinds of rooms, a small room, a bigger, and we're going to practice only the basic steps and basic techniques of the house clearing.
Training like this gives confidence to soldiers. Captain Jang Seo went to Afghanistan 2 years ago. He says training made him feel ready for the everyday risks.
We have to know what can possibly happen in this kind of situation or that kind of situation, and that's training. Before you knew in front of you everything was potentially adversary, but in urban situation, well, it's kind of 360 degrees, three-dimensional stuff, you don't know, upstairs, downstairs. So the things are different.
Canadian troops are fighting a new kind of war in Afghanistan. It requires theoretical training and simulations that prepare soldiers for the unexpected.
Classroom training is as important as simulations. But no matter how hard the instructors try to prepare their soldiers, they can never truly predict the reality of war.
It was something like every day. Every day that you had to go out of a camp was a risk to take. You had to manage that risk. But it was not something that I can pinpoint a day, an hour, and I had to face a dangerous situation.
For now, Captain Seo is studying at university. But in the next few years, he hopes to go on another mission. For Concordia News, I'm Irene Caselli in Montreal.
Nazrat Ali Hassan, an Afghani civilian, was shot and killed by Canadian troops on Tuesday. The taxi he was riding crossed a police checkpoint and came within a meter of a Canadian patrol vehicle. Canadian troops say they fired warning shots before shooting the man. Hassan's family says no such warning was given.
Premier Jean Charest is set to tackle Quebec's $117 million debt without raising taxes. Charest introduced his Fund for the Generations in his inaugural speech Tuesday. The goal is to cut the debt and reduce the heavy burden facing future generations. The Premier talked tough on education. He wants Ottawa to give more money for post-secondary training. The Premier has promised to revise public transit funds and to construct more hydro and wind projects. Opposition critics say the Liberals have not kept their promises from Charest's first address in 2003.
Doctors believe an infected nipple piercing is to blame for the death of a 17-year-old Newfoundland girl. Jody Lazar found out how risky body piercing can be.
Body piercing. For some, it's religious. For others, sexual. And for most, piercing is simply a matter of style. But when a 17-year-old girl died last week as the result of an infected nipple piercing, questions about the safety of body piercing began to surface. Chris Saliba owns Montreal's adrenaline piercing and tattoo shop. He thinks it's unfair of the medical community to blame the death directly on the piercing industry. He says piercing can be perfectly safe if the piercer takes proper safety measures and the client cares for it well.
When people come in with infections of sorts, especially in nipples or in mouths, it's usually because they didn't take care of it properly.
Reputable piercers give out specific instructions on how to care for a new piercing, and they recommend follow-up visits 2 weeks after it's done. If these guidelines are followed, they say, there's little risk of infection. Some doctors, however, disagree. Dr. Hugh Robson heads the Department of Infectious Disease at the Royal Victoria Hospital. He says when it comes to piercings, there's always a risk.
There are a lot of ad hoc or amateur kind of piercing establishments, which are not regulated in any specific way, and where there probably are very varying standards of hygiene. We have no idea whether the equipment they use has been sterilized properly or not. We don't know what kind of skin disinfection they use. And then there is the whole issue of a foreign body being put into the skin.
Despite the risk, Robson admits people will take chances in the name of fashion, which is why, since the girl's death, governments are starting to talk about tougher rules in the body piercing industry. Jody Lazar, Concordia News, Montreal.
Mentioning the word menstruation is enough to make many people squirm. But as Aaron Ray discovered, that's an attitude participants of one workshop are trying to change.
Ali Olszewski is on a mission. She's trying to change attitudes about menstruation.
We can be bombarded daily with the talk of the male member, but talk about menstruation and it's like taboo, you know?
And that's why Olszewski organized the second annual Stitch and Bitch. It's an opportunity for women to discuss menstruation while sewing reusable pads.
People should be a lot more comfortable with their bodies and with their something that's natural, and so this idea of actually being able to come together with other women who do, have the exact same thing every month, and it's it shouldn't be something that we are ashamed of.
Yeah, a great thing if some people are open to it. Your menstrual blood is really good for houseplants.
The workshop was held at Concordia's downtown campus. While it was open to both sexes, Tyler Campbell was disappointed he was the only man to show up.
I just find it's really important, especially considering me and Ali in a relationship, that I know about what's going on with her and her body.
Although only 10 people turned up, Olszewski considers the event a success. All indications are Stitch and Bitch will be back next year. Aaron Ray, Concordia News, Montreal.
It's Friday night, and students are already cramming for exams. It's overwhelming. It's all around us. It's stress. The Department of Exercise Science at Concordia University has just hired a professor who's trying to melt away our daily stress. Antonia McGuire has more on who's keeping things cool on campus.
Dr. Simon Bacon of Hertfordshire, England, is importing his stress management program to Montreal.
Everyone wants the magic pill. It's never really that simple, but in essence, that's what we're trying to do.
Bacon uses a combination of exercise, diet, and lifestyle changes to manage stress.
So there's 3 components to stress. Firstly, there's a stimulus, so something that occurs, for example, being caught in a traffic jam. Secondly, there is an evaluation, some way that you interpret what's going on. And then finally, there's a response, and normally that's kind of a physiological response, and that is what we would classically call stress or feeling stress.
So how would cognitive behavioral therapy impact younger people?
Well, it's a universal kind of therapy, and I mean, anybody at any age will gain benefit from these kind of interventions. Ideally, I mean, there's kind of like a set of life skills that you can be taught within a kind of CBT framework, and if the earlier you learn them, the greater potential for benefit that you'll get from them. So,
Dr. Bacon will be continuing his stress-busting research at Concordia's new behavioral medicine lab, slated to open this summer. Too late to help stressed-out students studying for their spring exams. For CJR News, I'm Antonia McGuire in Montreal.
In sports, the Habs were defeated last night 5-1 by the Carolina Hurricanes, who are top in the league. David Abisher, traded last Wednesday from Colorado, made his Canadiens debut at the Bell Center. The goalie made 36 saves to keep the Habs in the game. Still, it was not enough. The Canadiens welcomed Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins to the Bell Center Saturday night.
Springtime is back in Montreal, and the first sure sign is the prevalence of shamrocks and public drunkenness. The downtown pubs are gearing up to help Montrealers celebrate St. Patrick's weekend.
It's our Christmas, New Year's, and every other day rolled into a whole weekend this year, because St. Patrick's, of course, is Friday, and the parade is on the 19th on the Sunday, so it's just craziness for 3 consecutive days. We have an 18-wheeler out back, locked and filled with Guinness products. We go through an enormous amount of, especially Guinness on that day.
And now to Geneviève Allard with the weather. Hey Geneviève, how cold is it going to be for the St. Patty's pub goers tonight?
Well, Martha, as you can see, it's a beautiful day, but it is going to be a chilly weekend. Temperatures will drop to -5 tonight, and expect flurries on Sunday, just in time for the parade.
Thanks, Genevieve. And thank you for joining us at CJR News.
Have a happy and safe St. Patrick's Day weekend.
Drive safe.
See you next time from the CJR News team.